So this is Drupal migration from 6 and 7 to 8. So has anybody here done that before on a project? Okay, cool. We'll go over like doing the simple migration through the interface for both 6 and 7, and then we'll go over actually how to use Drush to do it and how to export, config files and set up a custom module, and then how to do like a pre-process, or a custom plugin. So that's basically what we'll cover today. So I'm Stephen Williams. I work at Xylem. I've been doing this for 17 years. Drupal for 9 or 10 years, something like that. And that's me. I also worked at UT and then various other places. All right, so Drupal 8 migration is different because it's a migration. Drupal 7, you had an option of doing, it was built in to do an upgrade. Has anybody ever done that in Drupal 7? An actual upgrade process where you replace the code base, went out, got modules, same modules. So you've done that? So that was one process. People usually did that on smaller sites. And then for larger sites, more complicated sites, it became more common to do use migration in order to upgrade the site from 6 to 7. And so in Drupal 8 it was decided, do away with the upgrade process, where you kept the database, you just replaced the code, and then you ran the upgrade scripts. And instead in Drupal 8 everything is migration. But they do have an interface, so they have an easy process to do that. But if you have anything that has any customization to it, anything that's complicated, you really have to kind of do the more of a controlled migration where you extend stuff and manipulate stuff. So they added the migration API parts of it to core, to do this migration. It's still experimental, so there's still some issues being worked on, but it is in core. Like I said, simple sites can use this. If you do the interface upgrade, it's like a one-time process. So it's really a simple site, is what you'll do that with. And then you can't roll back, right? So if you have anything that's more complicated, then you can't use that one-time interface process. So you have to install some other contrib modules, and then Drush is kind of where you would go from there. Has anybody done a migration in Drupal 7? Like where you roll back, and you extend classes and manipulate stuff. So we had a few people. Okay, cool. Okay, so there's some stuff that doesn't work, right? Views, nothing's been written to migrate views. So you'd really migrate your content over, and then you would set up views to work with that. You'd reposition blocks. There's some issues with dates, like date formatting, time zones. There's a difference in Drupal 6 with how Drupal 6 handles time zones and how Drupal 7 and 8 handles it. And if you're in Drupal 6, you have member node references. That doesn't come over, or user references doesn't come over. So, stuff, it's not just a magic button, magic bullet, right? So, to get started, really, you just set up a Drupal 8 site. You don't really do anything to it. You don't want to customize it because you're going to really replace most of your configuration and your content when you do the migration. So you just kind of set up the bare bones site. You wouldn't create a content type because you're going to import your content types or taxonomies or users or stuff like that. So after you set up Drupal, then you would go and you would enable the core modules, the migrate Drupal, and the UI. And then after that, you would navigate over to the upgrade URL. And then it gives you, we'll see it here in a second, it gives you an interface that you enter your credentials for your database, for the D6 or D7 database. You can either give it a path to where your files are at, or you can tell it the domain, if all your files you can access through the front end, you can do that. It asks you to review some stuff. It tells you what it thinks is missing. So you want to go out and at least install the modules, that you are compatible that you have in Drupal 6 or Drupal 7 that you'll need in Drupal 8. Some of those modules will include some migrate with it, and some of them won't. And so it gives you a list of what it thinks is compatible and what's not. And then you'll run the process. Once it's done, if you do it this way, then that's it. You don't roll back, you don't change anything. You would have to wipe the database and then redo it, so there's no rollback. So let's take a look at that. You have to bear with me because it seems kind of awkward turning around. So I've set up a simple Drupal 6 site here. I've also set up a pretty bare bones Drupal 7 site. And so we'll migrate those over. I'll show you a few things here. Yeah, so I'm logged in. I'm logged in as Steven, and you'll see I have first demo content. So let me click on admin. Content, and you'll see we really just have 2 pages here, a basic page and a demo content type. We go to there's nothing special about this one. This is bare bones. If we go to the demo one, I've set up a few fields here. Set up a link field and then a reference field, node reference, to show that. Set up a taxonomy. Just called it demo terms. Set up some roles. We have a contributor, editor, publisher role, and then we have some users. Second user, first user, Steven. And then I set up one block. Demo block. So if we go here, we'll see we have demo block here. So I guess the first thing we'll do is just run that simple migration, take a look at Drupal 8 and see what came over. So let's see here. I have a few different things set up on my local. Yeah, let's do this one. So this should be a clean install of Drupal. Let's go check. We don't have any content types. We don't have any content. Let's see. Yeah, let me log in. Can't see. So I have one user here. Can anybody guess my password? Yeah. So it's interesting to note that I set it up with the username of admin. So you'll see I don't have any users here besides this user 1. If we go to content types. So this one was installed with that profile. What is that? The simple profile or whatever it is. So it has articles and basic pages, but there's no demo. And then taxonomy. It's just tags, taxonomy that's created with that install profile. If we go to peoples, we'll see there's not any roles besides what's already installed by Drupal. And then, actually one other thing I want to show is, where we go, text formats. This is the default setup for Drupal 8. Over on Drupal 6, I did set up a filter. There we go. Call it demo. So one thing you run into a lot of sites, right, that have like PHP code filter or whatever, and that will error. It won't come over, and then you'll end up with a null entry, and it will kind of actually break your your rendering. Like if you had a body or some other text area that was using that filter, it will actually end up breaking and it won't display that. And so you can just go through on D8 and resave your filters, and then it kind of save it without that, and so then they'll display. But that is one thing you'll run into. So let's see here. All right, so let's do this. Let's go to extend. You'll see that there's this is just Drupal core. I think I might have put views on here. There's no reason to because it's not part of the migration. You can't migrate views. Yeah. So core experimental, that's where you'll find this, right? Because it's still experimental. So those are the three we're going to enable. So I'm running Docker, so it's a little bit slow, and I have several. Does anyone here run Docker locally? What about like Vagrant or VM? And then map? Anybody do map? Okay. So just, all right, get that installed. All right. So now we can, there's actually, so I said you go to upgrade, type in upgrade. There's now an entry. I'm not sure when this was added, but there is now this entry, administrative entry. I didn't notice that before. I think that's new. So this is your upgrade screen. Tells you to back up the database for the site. That would be for this site, which should be a bare bones. So your D6 site, you're really just reading from it. So you probably want to back it up, but I don't think nothing should happen with that.
Should you freeze it, like put it in a content lock or something like that?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, put it in maintenance mode. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, so we'll go continue next. Yeah, it says right there, put the site in maintenance mode.
Gotcha.
And then what I'm going to do, since I'm running Docker, and so my D6 site is set up like a host, so it's defined as just MySQL, right? So depending on your environment, that would be different, right? And then, I'm really secure about stuff. So I have just root. Oh. You do have advanced options here to change the port, or if you have prefix tables. This is where you can see right here, you can put in a path to where the files are in the directory. So you could like rsync to wherever you're migrating to, rsync your files over to a certain location, define that here, or if all your files are accessible through the domain, then you could do that, right? So we're gonna run this, and what this will do is it'll display upgrade paths, what it thinks is missing or is there. And so you could skim through this and say, okay, I have a module here, like, what's the module, Jonathan, what's that one? Paragraphs, right? So like it would say here, missing, it doesn't have any migration defined, path defined for that module. You'll see here it has dates. What's interesting here is it says link. Well, Drupal 8 has link module with it, and it actually works, so I'm not sure why it displays that as missing, but you'll see your node reference. Node reference doesn't work, right? User references doesn't work. It's missing. And then views. It's not going to migrate the views. It will tell you, right? It will say, this is what it will migrate. So it actually migrates roles, but I guess that's lumped in with users. But it's not really. It has its own migration path. So this is just a good starting point to make sure that you have things set up. And just go digging into other stuff that might be missing. So we'll go ahead and do this. And it actually starts scrolling and showing you what's happening. when you have errors, you'll start to see errors come through. Like if you have a date field that's not mapping over right or something like that. I think a node reference thing will start to show here in a second. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we've just upgraded it. It's a pretty simple site, not really a lot of content, right? So we should be able to go over to content. And you can see we have content type demo. We have a entry for page. So if we go to edit here, you'll see here's that term. So if we go, let's do this. It's kind of hard to flip back and forth, right, to the administrative, to have things change. All right, so you'll see that should pretty much match up. Demo is the term. So you see it has a menu entry here, primary links. So Drupal 8 doesn't have a primary links menu system or menu entry, but it still should have created it. But it's not linking it. Like, see, it's there, but it wouldn't render your breadcrumb or highlight your menu at this point, even though it's there. I don't think we had a path entry on that one. We can see that on Drupal 7. And then it has the link here. So partially pull that over. Let me see. So we had a title and a link, and it really just pulled over the link, it didn't pull over the title. So we have some success here. Author, date, promotions. So if we go over to people, we'll see there's a first user and second user. There's people in here. This is the other one, right?
What are you looking for?
People.
Isn't user management down below?
Yeah, there we go. All right, so we have second user, and they have their roles. First user, and it has its role. That should match up. Yeah, so that matches up. Roles and users came over. If we go to taxonomy, we'll see there's this new vocabulary. And then we'll see the terms that came over too. And we saw on that demo content type that the term, came over and was related. So if we go to, let's go look at structure and then blocks. Okay, so because we have the same theme and the same regions in the theme, this actually did come over. We have that demo block right there. But if you're, often what happens is, right, you write a new theme and you make changes, you have new regions, and so it's not really, you're gonna have to reposition everything, right? So it's not really a real world situation. And so we should see that right here. Yeah.
You mean brings over all the regions, but they're not oriented the same way?
That's right, yeah, that's right.
It doesn't convert your actual theme template though, right? You have to
No.
recreate that.
Yeah. You recreate your own theme, or you convert your own theme. So if you were to convert your own theme with the same, like machine
Regions.
name,
Yeah.
machine,
Yeah.
name to it, and then the regions, then it would bring them over.
Okay. So it's bringing over blocks, basically.
Yeah, and it's pulling the blocks over.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's D6. Is there any questions with that? I was going to show D7 next, which is pretty similar, but it's a little different. The process is similar, but the results are a little different. So here's our D7 site. So we have a demo block. We have this content type here. Demo, content, a user one, basic page. So we have a title, a link. Here we have a year, but notice the year is just, it's formatted to be a year, not like a full date timestamp or something. And then we have a reference page, basic page, and then we have the term, demo term. We have a menu entry. Oh yeah, let me show you that here. I did want to show that that menu is pulled over. It should be. So primary links, secondary links. That wasn't there before because Drupal 8 doesn't come with that. So here we do have that menu entry here. And it even knows it's node 1. But it's just not, but the node doesn't really know about it. So there's something, on a project had to deal with this, there's something going on with how you can have internal links and then what's called entity links. And so you can have two different types of links stored in Drupal 8. And so I think this came over as an internal link, and if it was modified, the menu entry was modified to be an entity link, then it loaded up in the form and rendered for the content. So there's something going on there that needs to be changed. Okay, so if we go to D8, D7 here, we'll have similar people with the roles. Anyways, I'm not going to go through each piece. It's really set up pretty similar, except that there's a date field and there's that node reference field. So this is
Year field?
what? Here, so there's a date field it's just a year though. It's not the full like date stamp. Recently I worked on a project where we had some dates that were like that. And it's common in D6 when you create a date field, you can choose a regular date field and tell it you just want the year and the month, or the year, or whatnot. All right, so let's.
And the permissions inside the roles come over from it?
Yeah. So the permissions tied to that module. It depends on how the module it's set up. But for the most part, your permissions do come over.
Does it have to be exact same permission?
Yeah, right. So it won't know about new permissions unless they've written a path for it or something like that.
But some of them do have a path written for it? From the D7 version to the D8 version?
I mean, the ones in core do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's hit or miss when you're dealing with someone else on a custom module.
Okay. So your migration of a core permission may not look the same in 8 that it does in 7, because it could be a different permission that does a similar thing.
That's right. A lot of times when people rewrite their module for the next version of Drupal, they're like, well, let's improve this. This
Right,
didn't work
exactly.
out. So,
Yeah, get rid of these, add those. Yeah.
All right, so I think I need to log into this one. Oh, let me show you that too. On the users. Oh, it logged me out. I'll show you on this one. So that I was user admin when I set this up. Right here, I'm admin. But when it migrated over, that user one, the username actually updated. So it's going to be Steven. I'll show you on this one.
Do the passwords migrate?
Yes, the password's migrated. All right, so let's go and install those modules. We're going to begin the experimental section down here, just the same that we did before.
What What about modules that have a ton of config, like say LDAP? I mean, where you have like
So yeah, so
5
on the project we had to set up LDAP totally differently.
completely
Yeah.
re-implement it.
Yeah.
And then how about the users? They migrate over
Yeah,
and then
the
first time you
users
log in,
migrated over, but then we had to set up the table for
Right.
LDAP.
Right.
The users in that table, so there was
Okay.
definitely custom work on that.
Okay.
But the users could log in, actually, without LDAP. Like, we had a few administrators that could log in, right?
Okay.
Because they would go around that, right? But
Right, and I imagine if you ran a migration from an LDAP 7 site to a non-LDAP 8 site, all the user data would come over
yes,
and it wouldn't require LDAP log.
that's stuff that you're storing in Drupal.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through this. We'll get into more of the Drush stuff here in a second, custom stuff. This is going to be Drupal 7. I did that wrong again. All right, same settings. This is all the same. Same stuff here. All right, very similar warnings. Entity reference says it's missing. Links says it's missing. Views. Kind of slow, huh? All right, so let's go see. You see the demo block right there. Okay, you can see the user 1 demo. You see there's an actually error message for the menu here. Although the menu entries there, parent didn't come over. Okay, so that's kind of weird, right? Your search block is here. Title, body, link, that's pretty solid. The year. So on the projects I've done this on, the year is actually in the database as 2017 or 2016, whatever it was. But the widget doesn't recognize it unless it has a full timestamp. So on our projects we had to write, like we had to transform the date and add, make it into a timestamp. Although the data migrated, it wasn't in a way that Drupal liked it. And so it seems like more of a widget issue, whether the widget can display just a date. Anyway, so you'll run into that, right? Reference page, that entity reference works. Drupal 6, node reference did not work. Drupal 7, entity reference did work. And the term came over. But look at this, though, these blocks. It's kind of weird, right? So, structured block layout. And then, right, this is administrative theme. So pull those over. Right, so here's the search form, who's online, user login stuff, right? But I'm not going to show you everything. Oh, I do want to show you this. That was admin, right? And now it's Steven. So that was that update I was mentioning. That's a little confusing, right? It's user 1. But it's not a good demo there. But you can see the roles came over. Anyway, so that's kind of, so that we couldn't roll back, right? So this is like a one-time migration. You would have to dump the database and redo it. But you see there's issues, right? So you'd have to be a pretty simple site or small enough that you would do this, and then you go in and update stuff manually or change stuff manually. So that's how I see this is working. Anything that's a little more complicated or larger, you'd have to use kind of the Drush process. And so So let's move on. Were there any questions about that, or any comments or anything about the UI upgrade?
Is there a list of modules that have an upgrade path? I mean, other than running through this and seeing what's missing?
Yeah, I don't know of one. If anyone else does, that'd be
I've
great.
seen lists out there, but they're not updated.
Yeah,
And they change like all the time. So.
yeah.
I mean, so like revision history and stuff like that, if you're using, you know.
You really just like, if you did like a D6 to D7, right? You kind of went out there, you pulled the modules,
Yeah.
you saw what the latest situation was in D7, you read their README files, see if they had, an upgrade path. So you really just kind of you still do that research and still do that.
Well, I mean, when we had the update method, it kept your whole database and then it transformed the database.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like everything you had in the database in 6 was still there in 7. It may have been ignored. But
I guess it transforms.
it didn't go delete all my revision history. It didn't
Yeah.
delete any sort of workbench moderation stuff I had, or some of those advanced things that this is ignoring.
Yeah.
But it may just not have included it in the.
So revisions do come over on our project.
Okay, came over.
Yeah, but as far as your question about all the other modules, I don't know. I mean, you just
Yeah,
have to-
right. It's every site can have
Yeah.
26,000 modules. It can be infinite number of
And it's
combinations.
always changing, like Jonathan said, so everybody's updating it. All right, so then, in a real migration, really you have to, customize stuff, right? And you roll back, you make, changes, transform, or pre-process data, and then migrate again, roll back, migrate again. And so, in order to do that, you really have to install these 3 additional modules. Migrate Upgrade, which it defines dependencies in your migration, and it also it lets you export template files. So with those template files, you can then start to change the plugins or alter data. So Migrate Plus, it really adds, so what's in core is just the basic parts to do the migration, right? But if you've done a migration in Drupal 7, the API was much larger, and so you could do a lot more. And so Migrate Plus just is adding back to that, right? It provides grouping so you can organize with groups, and it actually provides some examples. And then Migrate Tools, it adds drush commands, several more drush commands, and it has its own UI. If you've done a migration in Drupal 7, it has a UI interface that shows you everything that's mapping, what the count is for those nodes or the menus or whatever, and so that adds that.
Can you explain version specific?
Yeah, so I guess the best way to, if you're not aware of that. So they tell you right here, in Drupal 8, right, the version numbers are important because it's a different API. So Drupal 8.1 migration is different than in Drupal 8.2 and 8.3. They make changes, right? And so here, these modules are very dependent on those changes. So you want to make sure you install the right versions depending upon what Drupal version you're running. And all 3 of those are like that. All right, so what you do is really you want to get the config files, all those YAML config files. And so what you do is you run this drush command, drush migrate. You tell it the database, credentials, and then what's important is you have the -- configure only. And since it's configure only, what it's going to do is it's going to create those template files, but it's not going to run the migration. And then you have those template files to start working with, so that you can edit them and then run other drush commands. So now we have, because of migrate tools, we have migrate status, and then migrate import, and then migrate import all. So you can import a specific one or just tell it to run the whole thing, right? And now we also have grouping. We can run a limit, like we run a migrate and set a limit to like just 5. So you can do a test or something. You can do feedback, which I've never really done that one. Actually, it's supposed to give you updates of how many it's done. So if you have a large migration that lasts like 8 hours, you might want to know whether it's hung up or not. Column separated list of the IDs. update, you can run an update. So what update does is it pulls in any new nodes and then it actually re-imports the old nodes or terms or whatever it is you're importing, right? So, and then force, it basically will ignore any dependencies. So like, for example, if I'm running a migrate for a content type, but the users haven't been imported yet, well, it's gonna say you can't run it because the users haven't been imported. But for some reason, if you need to run that to test something, then you can just say force it to go, right? And then of course you have the migrate rollback. You can do stop if you know for some reason it's running and you need to stop it because you know you're gonna have to roll it back anyway and you don't want it to run for 5 hours. And then sometimes when you run stop, it's gonna stick, or if something happens during the migration and it sticks, then you have to reset the status so you can run it again. So this kind of brings in a lot of the stuff that you had in Drupal 7 migrate, you have it back at your disposal again, which isn't in Drupal core. Yeah?
Isn't in Drupal core?
No, all those commands are basically, you have on the Drush command line, you get those from that migrate tools module. Right. And with the migrate plus, it's extended so you have those options too. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but when you run this command, you have configure all set right here. It gives you a list that says exporting, and then it starts to show you all the different YAML files it's exporting. But that's all it does. It says exporting and then it reports them. But so, like the first time I did this, I was like, okay, they're exported. So I went and started looking on the file system, thinking, where are they at? Well, they're not really exported. They're really in the database. And so what you have to do after that is you have to run drush config export, sync, or whatever you set up your export as. And then it will export them into YAML files. So that's kind of a confusing part if you haven't done that before.
Does it put the entire contents of the YAML file into a 4,000 character field in the database?
Yeah, I've never looked at how the config manager stores the
If
stuff.
your YAML file is large enough, that could cause a constraint problem.
Yeah, I know there was a config. Actually, there's one tomorrow about configuration management. Yeah, but I mean, configuration management is kind of like features in that you still have some stuff that's in the database that you need to export or re-import. Sure. But yeah, so just know that when you first run that with that config setting, you don't have YAML files. You still have to run config export to actually export the YAML files to then actually work with them. All right, so let me see if I can pull up. I wanted to show you what these look like and kind of break them down a little bit. I'm not going to go into everything. All right, so this is one of them. So you can see this was generated with Migrate Plus, migration, upgrade D6 node demo, right? So some of this is generated from, that's the config manager's UID. I'm not going to go into all of this, but one key piece, you'll see the label here. You'll see source. The plugin it's using is D6 node, that's the source. And then the bundle is demo content type. So this is kind of important, and I'll show you in a second how you could actually change this or actually extend the D6 node source so that you have a lot of control over what's going on here. And then you have process. And so you'll see this is kind of where all your fields, everything about the node is defined, the data about the node. So the IDs, the title, the author. This stuff should look familiar. Can y'all see that back there? Can you see it, Ed? Okay. All right. So like I said, this should look pretty familiar. It's just a YAML file structure of this node type. So body value, the summary teaser, the link field. So it's using a plugin. So this is the plugin it's using. This is the source field that it's pulling from. Here's the reference field, the year, and then we have destination, and then you have plugin, entity node, the same bundle, right? And then down here you have dependencies, right? So first, what this means is these are actually YAML files. Like there's a migrate plus, .migrate, .upgrade, G6 user YAML file, and so forth. So you'll see the users have to come in, the node types have to come in, the node settings, and the filter format has to come in first. So those have to import first, and then it will, and then you have optional ones down here. And then after that, this one can run. So it really kind of defines all this for you, which is kind of nice. It saves you a lot of time. And then you can go in and just pick areas that you need to manipulate, to change out and manipulate.
Is the date format here? Is that where you would change the date format if you wanted?
Well, yeah, so this one that's pretty cool. So this, in our project that we did,
Yeah.
that you were on actually, it didn't do that. So this has been an upgrade. I think 8.3 might have added this. So yeah, it might be just as simple as changing that date format now.
Cool.
Whereas before we had to write a custom process, plug-in. So yeah, so things are still improving, right? And then I think the hope was that 8.3, right? It would not be in experimental mode, but it still is. So it's pretty complicated. So are there any questions about that? All right. So you'll have a whole bunch, right? There'll be a lot of YAML files. That's that. All right, so plugins. So you saw like there was that link plugin for the link filter, but there's also other ones that we get now. So you could change that if you wanted to do some sort of exploding. You would come over. Say we wanted to well, you can see where plugins are, right? So if you need to do some sort of, like on the year, you needed to do one of these other plugins, then you could do that. You could do explode, extract. If you had a custom field that you need, like custom text field, right, and you need to do some processing on that, substring, skipped on the empty, address. I guess that's in, I'm not sure, let me show you this. I'm not sure why the address is listed here on this one. Oh, it's kind of cool. So you can go on this page and then they'll give you examples of how to do this. Process, destination field, plugin, callback. And then your callback would be string to lower. And then you would tell it the source field that you're actually performing that on, right? So these are process plugins that are already available for you to work with. If you're not able to perform, the processing with one of these, then you end up writing a custom one. So I think that's what I'll show you next. Oh, so then you could write your own, right? All right, so that's what we're going to look at now, writing your own process plugin. So really you create a custom module. In your custom module, you would have to give it a path of source, plugin, migration process, and then your file that you're going to have that in. And then you would define your namespace. Here we have Drupal, demo migrate, plugin, migrate process. That's the namespace we're using. Then you have to pull in, you have to, include some classes. Here the important ones would be process plugin base. That's what we're going to extend really, right? Row and execute interface. And then this is really important here because this is how it gets discovered, right? So you have the ID of custom date. So in that YAML file, if we wanted to use this custom process, where it says process, here, plugin, where it says plugin, right? We would put that you put that ID there. But you have to have this at migrate process plugin ID for it to discover it. And then extend the process plugin base so that you write your class, you're extending the process plugin base, and then that's where you're updating the YAML file with that ID. So that's kind of hard to see there. You have it right here. So here's an example where we, so you'll see it has the definition up here contains migrate plus, custom date. The namespace, we define the namespace. We include the process plugin base, the row, custom ID. And here's where we're extending the process plugin base class. And then here we run transform. That's basically what you do in a custom plugin base is you just transform the data, right? So here we're transforming with a date, and then we're just returning the value. So you're just transforming that data. Any questions on that? All right, so the next thing we're going to do is a pre-process. So, you're just returning it, you're transforming data and returning the value. But there might be a situation to where you actually need to alter the source. Instead of just transforming that one field, you need to alter the source. Or you need to pull data from another piece of the source and then put it into another field. And so you need that control. And so you'd have to do more than just a process plugin. And in this situation, we're going to do, we're going to extend the node source. So this is extending the source. So instead of replacing the plugin, we're going to replace the source. So it's really pretty similar, right? You have the source plugin migrate source instead of process, and then this is what we're calling ours. You're setting your namespace. You're including classes. So this is important, the D6 node. We have to include that. Migrate source with this ID, right? And then we're extending the node. Class custom node demo. And then you can do your, prepare row or whatever in here. And then you need to update the YAML file to point to that. So here it would be, so we need to go up to source, and we would change this to be whatever our ID is, right? And remember, we're extending D6 node, so you still have everything happening in the D6 node that you had before. It's just now you're extending it so you have control of that. And one thing I wanted to show you is, so here's, see how we, these are just some examples, right? So to get the source property, this is the field, and then do whatever, and then rows set source property, and then with the value. So there was a couple situations where we had to actually take data from one field and put it into a different field, and you could do that here, because you have, basically you're changing the structure of the node, the data, the entity, as it's coming over, right? So you have a lot of control here. So one thing I found helpful when actually running these, perfect. One thing I found helpful is this drush print R. When this is not commented out and you run this, so you could run set a limit, and you could not set anything or change anything. Comment out that stuff, and you can run it, and you'll see the structure, right? It'll show you the structure of the source. And you can say, oh yeah, look, here's the date field, and this is the structure, and this is how I have to, find the values and stuff like that. So I found that very helpful. So basically, is there any questions about this?
Drush print R will only print that while you're running the drush command.
Yeah, it'll do the drush command just stream on it, right? So usually I'll use a limit on there, remember how you can run drush migrate and then -- limit 10 or whatever it is to get to, you can see some of the content that has the structure that you need, you know. Yeah.
Run it multiple times like unpack until you get the area that you want.
Yeah. I mean, I've ran it with, it just depends on how big your migration
No,
is.
it could be, hundreds of lines.
And you can pipe it off into a file, you know, and then search your file or something, right? All right, so there's like 700,000 Drupal sites on D6 and D7. Okay, so I don't know if so Drupal 8, once you migrate to Drupal 8,
Well, it sounds like with any level of complexity, the automated migration isn't going to be helpful at all.
it's not, yeah,
And you're just going to add the tools, and you're basically going to run a mock-up until you're satisfied that it's running the same thing. And then you're just going to say, stop going here and go there.
yeah.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah. So once you're on Drupal 8, so recently there's been a change in philosophy. So once you're on Drupal 8, you're not supposed to have to do any migrations after that, right? It's just more of like upgrades, like point upgrades. So it should be written in the schema upgrade that you get, right? And you run when you move from 8.2 to 8.3, your schema update, and the data change then, right? So that's, in my experience, like on sales calls or with other people, there's certain small sites, and then even other bigger sites, there's just a budget hit for people, right? And then just, WordPress doesn't have to do this. And so I think there's a little bit of concern that this might be causing issues, with clients in the community, right? So this might help. We'll see, right? Maybe we can get through a few versions. Like, so 9 going to 9, that's philosophy. You wouldn't have to do a migration, right? At some point, something's going to have to change enough to probably have to do something like that again, right? But any questions? Yeah.
So I guess we could probably be here all day talking about specific modules, but do you have any experience working with like migrating panels from like 7 to 8?
No, I haven't migrated panels. We've not. So let me see. There was panels in the project we recently did, and but there wasn't a migration of the panels.
Okay.
We actually used Lightning, and Lightning is using more of content types instead of the panel variants,
Okay.
And so we were actually pushing them away from using panel variants, right? So I haven't done that.
I got you.
I'd just like to point out that this was like the most live demo of any talk I've seen, where it went really well.
Oh, cool.
I expect that, so.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah.
What did you find was a good way to expose those row, like the set row attribute? I was just curious, like, are there other functions you find yourself using commonly, or did you have to kind of explore what the functions were of set? Like back in your snippet, I think you got it. When you're modifying the row. I think
yeah.
that's pretty important. Yeah, the get source property and the set source property, those functions of the row. Did you find yourself having to explore different? I guess you could DPM or KSM and see like what functions are available for row.
Oh yeah. So that's where I use this. I use drush print R. Oh, you're talking about the functions that are available.
Yeah, like besides just is it
I just looked at the API. So
Just the API.
Yeah.
Do you find that's like the most common one you found, or?
Yeah. These are the ones I've had to use. Just these two: get source property, get set source property. But yeah, there's. I mean, I couldn't go into the. I'm not. I got you.
Yeah, it's all in the docs. So
Yeah.
Dive in there. Yeah, sure.
And I just kind of figured out as what I need, right? So.
It'd be kind of cool to maybe see you'll have this posted up. Just
Yeah, I'll put this up. I'll put a link to this slideshow, make it public,
Where are you gonna do that?
This one, I guess this won't, maybe I can zip these up and put a link to them? I don't know. I can put it on a repo. That's a great idea. Yeah. So I'll put that, maybe at the bottom here, the repo link. Like maybe here, I'll put the repo link here. I'll do that today. Awesome. And of course, you can contact me, email me. I think my email's on here somewhere. whatever. I guess that's it. We still got 5 minutes though, so if you have any questions.